Really, how much time does it take to close on buying a house?
Well, one of the things I got to talk to you about first is a lot of it depends on the person themselves and what type of loan they're getting. There's don't really have time to get into it, but there's FHA loans and there's VA loans and there's what we call conventional loans, which basically means it's not insured or guaranteed by any government entity like VA and FHA is. But if you're doing conventional, in most cases, if the buyer, again, a lot of it depends on the buyer too. The mortgage company is going to ask the buyer for quite a few different documents, verification of their employment and their money in the bank and things like this. And if the buyer, quickly gets everything to them the way they should, we can probably close it within about 30 days. So you need about a 30-day span there. So if you were looking to want to say like, this is October, if we want to close this is almost the end of October, you want to close something by the end of the year. It's time to start looking now. So you can have time to find something, give you that 30 days to close. And if you're doing an FHA or VA loan, that time frame could be as much as 45 days. It's because of the requirements of the extra paperwork that goes along with FHA and VA type loans. So usually about 30 days, though, is a good time frame. And again, you don't want to push that because let's say I went and wrote an offer as a buyer and I only gave myself 20 days. At the end of that 20-day period, I would have to either go in and ask the seller for an extension, which they're under no obligation to give me an extension. Right? And at that point, I'm actually in default of the contract because I didn't close within the time frame I said I would. At that point, we go back to that earnest money thing. My earnest money is possibly in jeopardy because I didn't close on the property. So you got to make sure you have enough time in there. So it's very important that the agent you're working with understands what kind of loan you're getting and how much time we need to close. Okay, so that's the main thing about closing. You got to make sure you have enough time in there. You don't want to run out of time because what if this is just an example. Let's say you and I had an offer and you're the seller, I'm the buyer, and I put a 20-day closing in there. We're going to close in 20 days. Well, that 20 days is quickly approaching. I'm not ready to close, so I ask you for an extension. But in the meantime, you had somebody else come in and give you what we call a backup offer at, say, $10,000 more than my offer. So you were obligated to accept my offer because you already signed a contract with me, didn't you?
Right.
But you're not under any obligation to extend it. So you might go, no, I'm not extending it. If you don't close, I'm just going to cancel the contract. I'm going to take this other one that I can make more money off of. And even on top of that, I may even try to keep your earnest money. And it's like, so again, you got to make sure there's enough time in there. Right? So a lot of times, one of the things people don't understand is the way the contract reads, it says on or before. So let's say I put November 30th. Now, if I'm ready to close on November the 20th, and the seller is ready to close too, we can go ahead and close on the 20th. We don't have to wait till the 30th. That's just the final deadline of when we can close.
Right.
Okay, so that's an important thing. One of the other questions come up in the closing is, what about possession? Well, in almost all cases, you take possession upon the property the day of closing. The buyer does. The seller has to be out of the property. I hate to say this, but I've heard these stories through my years. The seller go, I thought we had 3 days to move out after closing. And it's like, no. This buyer bought the house that day. The buyer can start moving in as soon as he signs all the paperwork. He can literally, drive from the title company with his stuff in the back of his truck and start moving in. It's his now. And there is no 3 days for the seller to get out. If for some reason the seller needs to stay for a longer period of time, we either need to delay the closing or there is a way where the seller can actually lease it back from the buyer for a short period of time. So there's other ways to do it. Right? So possession is very important. And closing, just so I can mention this real quick, there's a thing we call a walkthrough. A walkthrough is a very important thing that the buyer needs to do. Most buyers don't even think about this. They write a contract, The seller has agreed to be out of the property. They've agreed to maybe do some repairs on the property. They've agreed to different things. They also, in the contract, had said that all this, different things were staying in the property. Say a ceiling fan, things like this. Well, if once you purchase a piece of property, the day the buyer closes, he just bought that house, we discussed this, as is, where is, right? Mm-hmm. So if he goes to the property and the seller's not out of the property, you know what you have to do if the seller's not out of the property? You have to evict these people, just like they would if it was an apartment that people didn't move out when their lease was over. What if they decided to take the ceiling fans with them? Okay, you'd have to actually, at this point, because you're already closed. And now the contract said the ceiling fans stay, but at this point, now you're talking legal action to go back to the seller and make them bring your fans, don't you?
Right.
Or they agreed to do some repairs and they haven't done those. So it's imperative that your agent, your buyer's agent, take you over to the property, usually a day before or early in the morning, the day of closing, to make sure of a lot of things, making sure the repairs are done, that everything that's supposed to be in the house is still there. The seller has moved out, so you can take possession of it. You don't want to close on the property and find out this after the fact. So again, that goes back to your having a good buyer's agent to make sure you do this walkthrough, isn't it?
Now, what if you take the walkthrough and you find that they've done some of the things they said they would do in the contract, and then they haven't done a couple of things. Now, and then you go into closing.
You don't go to closing, Larry.
So.
I was buying your house. I go over there and let's say you took the ceiling fan out of the master bedroom because I don't know, it was a big Hunter fan or something. It was an expensive fan. My understanding was, and the contract said it stayed, but you took it. Well, you haven't closed, and you haven't got your money yet, right?
Right.
I bet you if I say I need my fan back, you're going to probably bring my fan back and put it back in because you haven't got your money yet.
Or anything else they haven't.
Anything else. That was just an example. So if all things are supposed to be done, and I have gone over to, say, do a closing, and say go over there in the afternoon, we're going to close, say, 10 o'clock next morning, we'll go over there at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's pretty obvious the seller is, at the rate they're going, is not going to be out of the house by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. I don't know how they did it. I did this with people one night. They must have stayed up all night because they still had a few repairs to do, plus they hadn't moved out. We went back the next morning around 8 o'clock, and those people were gone, and everything was done. So, you know, it's very important that you do this, okay? So, again, that goes back to your buyer's agent knowing what he's doing, isn't it?
Exactly.
So he's got to make sure that everything is done properly and the way it's supposed to be done. Another good reason that you need an agent on your team, right?
Oh, exactly. Yeah. A real estate agent that's been trained and is knowledgeable of all this stuff is something that's a must and one of the biggest investments of your life for most people when it comes to buying a house. There's not too many things they're going to buy that are going to be more expensive than that.
That's right.
And that's why you need the kind of representation that's necessary for this type of situation. Okay, so you've got this closing, you've got 30 days, and you've stressed the importance of that time period, which you've made it pretty obvious that you don't want to have it any shorter than necessary. You want that
right.
30 to 45 day, depending on if it's FHA or BA. Is there anything else that someone would need besides this walkthrough? This walkthrough is very important, obviously. If everything's satisfactory, you just go to the closing and sign the papers.
Yeah, now that we know the title work's done and you're going to get clear title to it, you've already had the inspection done, so you're satisfied with the condition of the property.
Right.
The survey's been done, the loan's been approved, and this is the reason it takes 30 days.